live from the Coachella Valley. Time for another hour of the desert scene. Art exhibitions to modernism, music festivals to live theater, big screen, little screen, and very little screen. This is the Culture Corner with Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza. Here's Bonnie and Brayan on iHub Radio.
And welcome to the Culture Corner. It's a beautiful day today. We've got a jam-packed show, lots of guests. In fact, Brian's kicking it off with a guest he booked. Tell us about her.
Okay, so we have Chella Coleman. She is an activist, a lead singer of the band You Guys Suck Like Real Hard. Shut the F up. Thanks.
Little bit controversial name for a band.
Controversial name, but I love it. And so I wanted to go ahead and introduce Chella Coleman. Hi, Chella. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Now, Chella, we just got to get started on here. Tell us about your band name. Tell us all about it.
Well, really quick, I was really depressed during the night, and I had a friend who was in another band. They also have a controversial name. They're called FTAS. And they always told me that if I wasn't to hang out, because I'm always posting about hanging out, like I'm always real and like talking about my my issues that I go through on Facebook. And they were like, I see your post. If you ever want to hang out, I have a studio, so that like, you know, just hit me up. And one day I was going through a lot. I went through a lot. And yeah, I self-harmed, and then I reached out to them, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to be alone. And they were like, well, come through. And I did. They got me a lift. And I went. They're like, well, you know how you like listening to rock music? Well, tonight we're going to make rock music. And we started making music, and then our last song shut off the power. And then, we did music for a good, let's see, I want to say hour and a half. And at the end of it, we went outside, and there was a note that said, you guys suck, like real hard, shut the up, thanks. And we just kind of kept that as an affirmation of ourselves, and to show how different we are. And it's very punk. I think it's very punk to use something that someone says, in an empowering way.
Now, I know that in our conversations, you've always said that you wanted to use your music as a form of activism. Can you tell us more about that? Like, for anyone that doesn't know what your brand of activism is, if you excuse the expression.
So, as a disabled, fat, black, trans woman that lives in Skid Row on Tongva land, right? I'm very political. I've been political for the last 11 years. I started doing stuff around student rights. Then I went on to trans rights. And through that, I started learning about the prison industrial complex, the new Jim Crow, and how we got to where we are today, right? The term intersectionality, which looks at different identities and how they intersect with different oppressions. And so I've always been someone that's been like, well, I don't just want to do the normal activism thing. I've always done like art. I've always done theater or comedy. And so when music fell in my lap, it was just, and when people ask me, are you trying to get famous? Like, you've asked me that actually. And I'm like, no, I just want to turn race, gender, and class on its head and make people think about what they perceive as beauty.
Chella, are you there?
Did we lose her?
I think we might have. Chella, if you're not there, we might have to get you back. If you hear,
I wanted to ask her if she felt like she's made any headway in making those changes with her music.
Of course. Let's go ahead and try to get her back real quick.
Okay.
But meanwhile...
Okay, so we've got, this is great, and we've got a lot of guests, really diverse guests today. We have Chella, and then a little later we're going to talk to Fern Field Brooks. She's a wonderful author. She was a television producer, author. She's got another new book out, many books. Then the second hour, we're talking to my buddy, Siobhan Velarde. We're doing a show, a cabaret show this Saturday, next Saturday, called Bosom Buddies, with Mark Caney on the piano at Runway, which is a wonderful little club in Cathedral City. I'm so excited to finally be working with her. We've become friends and I've gone to open mics and that kind of thing, but we're finally doing a show together. Excited about that. And then our last guest today will be the fabulous Ruta Lee, star of stage screen television, Hollywood Squares, all kinds of 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. And she's got a new book out called Consider Your Ass Kissed, which is one of her favorite phrases. I'm looking forward to talking to her. I think we have Chella back. Yes? Chella, hi, this is Bonnie. I have a question for you. Do you feel that you've made some progress in hoping to move forward some of these changes, social changes with your music?
Yes. Like one of the things we've done is during the COVID, as someone who is in Skid Row, one of the highest populations of folks that have been impacted through COVID, and seeing in LA specifically, there's a lot of land and there's a lot of houses that could be used for housing. And there's also people that are getting pushed out of their homes, right? Like right and left, we saw low-income brown families, specifically low-income brown and black families being pushed out of their homes, right? And the mayor here has been like, I'm creating this thing called Operation Room Key, but you still go drive through Skid Row or any other neighborhoods, and you see that there's more homeless people than there should be, right? Not only that, but he's created more homeless people by criminalizing people who are staying in their homes, rightfully so, when they have 2 jobs that they've been doing, as well as taking care of their children and families, right? So, one of the big things we do, we started to do is, because I do other types of activism, right, is I blended the two. We would do what I call takeovers, which is we take over a street, right, and we play, and we challenge, we take over the street either of that council member, of the council member's office, and that's what we did one day. We actually targeted a specific council member called Mitchell Farrell, who in the same day he let black trans people put Black Trans Lives Matter in Hollywood. That's his jurisdiction. He also, with Pride last year, he also pushed out a bunch of homeless folks. So, there's a dichotomy there because, houseless folks, when you think about houseless folks, one of the highest populations besides veterans and moms is LGBT youth, right? LGBT trans and queer youth, and that mainly impacts trans people of color, right? And so we would just challenge that, and we took over streets, demanding justice. I mean, I'm not going to say we've done anything. We just let our presence be known. Our last event we just did was called Defend All Femmes, which was kind of a celebration of my birthday, right? Because my birthday was passed, and I said, I want to do something. And what we did was we raised money and got self-defense kits for women and folks who identified as femme, and we gave hygiene kits for men. And we also took over a street, actually my street where I live, and we played and we gave out these things, and I'm still giving these out as a demonstration, actually, because we have a lot of tasers and pepper spray for femmes. So, yeah. So we've been doing a lot, I do want to acknowledge that we are in a pandemic, and so we have been like, hey, wear your mask. And also wearing a mask is also a good way where you're doing stuff like protests, because police do like to try to identify you. So wearing masks, and also we had folks going around doing hand sanitizer, and we would do social distancing as much as we could. So yeah, I think those were really impactful,
Hey, Chella, I wanted to ask you actually. Now, I wanted to move to Lil Nas X, because me and Bonnie watched the music video, and we honestly, I loved it actually. What about you, Bonnie?
It's provocative. It's maybe a little controversial, but I've seen other music videos that are probably just as controversial, really. So I don't know.
And I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Lil Nas X is. I think they've been wanting to stir the pot for a minute. And we can't talk about this art without this song without talking about how, number one, queer black art has always been demonized, right? It's always been if Black art isn't supporting the system of white supremacy, and like, let's face it, we live in a Christian nation, right? Like, we can talk about how secular we are, we can talk about the separation of church and state all we want, but we do live in a Christian nation, right? And so, like, folks are, like, scared of something that, like, looks even remotely satanic. I remember watching Wendy Williams after it came out, and Wendy was like, I do not even touch anything of the devil. Nope, 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 nope. And it's like, yeah. I also think about, the demonizing queerness, right? Like, now, I don't mind demonizing queerness because I'm not Christian, so like, fuck that shit. I'm sorry. Screw that stuff. Sorry, y'all.
That's all right.
Screw that stuff. But I'm like, yeah, I'm very into, like, the Dark Lord, witchcraft, Satan. Like, I'm into those imagery stuff. As long as you're not hurting anyone and you're not hurting yourself, I say go for it. I also think we should talk about the fact that Lil Nas X is a Black person, right? Mm-hmm. And so because of that, there's going to be a microscope on them. Remember when they first came out with Old Town Road, and it was all over the country music, stations, and then they took it off because they were like, oh, it's a Black man. But it's like, y'all, we got to realize that Black folks started a bunch of this music. So I think it's very much a two-sided thing of queerness and Blackness being demonized and being demonized.
Now, I wanted to ask you actually about your upcoming Queer Apocalypse events, and I wanted to know what kind of music would you describe that is played at these events? Like, tell us about the music that is played, and also what are some expectations that one would have at these types of at Queer Apocalypse?
Well, first and foremost, Queer Apocalypse started as just a way to get my band money, right? Like, I'm poor. I'm not gonna sit and lie, so it just started. It started 2 years ago, when we were meeting in real life. And, and I would have not just rock. I would have my friend Chella, who does, like, soulful pop rock music. I would have my friend T-Rex, who does R&B music. I would have poets. I did a comedy one day. I also opened up with a theatrical artistic piece. Like, it's a bunch of things. And that's also what I like to say, flipping the world of cisgender, white, cis normativity on its head, right? Just like being there for the artists of color, especially Black artists, right? And so, yeah, and then during the last, during the COVID, we transitioned to doing online stuff.
Hey, Chella, I was actually going to say we're about to actually run out of time. We're about to go into commercial. I do apologize, but I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on, Chella.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
You can look us up and follow us on our Instagram page. It's Queer Apocalypse, and you guys suck like real hard. Shut the up. Thanks.
Okay, we'll check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chella. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Here are Bonnie and Brayan.
And we're back in the Culture Corner. We've got a little news and some sad news. We lost a couple of well-known people recently. Just yesterday, Prince Philip, 99. I think it was 100th birthday is only a couple weeks away, so he almost made it. But he's been ill for a while.
Oh, I think he's actually the most long-lived consort for like a queen or something like that. I think so. Yeah. The interesting thing about Prince Philip is that I think for a lot of people, his legacy is going to be sort of a mixed bag. I think it's going to be between there. I think a lot of love for him is going to be associated with the Queen. Like if they love the Queen, they'll most likely throw him in there. But I've always saw him as a very private man compared to her.
Yeah.
And another thing is that I think his legacy is a little, unfortunately, maybe a little tarnished because of the Meghan Markle interview and some of that stuff.
You know, and I was thinking about this today when I first heard that he passed. I know the funeral's going to be small because it's COVID and not a state thing and all that. But I'm going to be really interested to see. I would be willing to wager that either Harry will come alone or neither of them will come. But I cannot see Meghan Markle being invited to this funeral. I think it would be extraordinarily awkward.
I think it would be awkward too. I think it would be one of those, you know, when you have those friends that tell you, "Hey, here's an invite," but they're kind of giving it to you like, "Don't really come, but I'm letting you know that you're invited regardless."
Yeah. I just can't see that. I mean, I could see the Queen sending a message to Harry, "Look, you know, don't mess this up. Either come by yourself or don't come." You know.
You know, and it's possible that maybe Meghan Markle might show up, but again, it's one of those things where like
big mistake. I think it would be a big mistake.
I think it would be a big mistake, but also because like, you know, he died, and I know in some ways she can't really anticipate those sort of things. Right. I mean, if you lived until 99, I've seen a lot of celebrities live until 104.
Yeah,
like Beverly
Cleary, who just passed too. Yeah, children's book writer. She's 103, 104, something like
104 years old. So you see a lot of these celebrities, and it's a good way to transition over to her. Have you ever read any of those books?
You know, I haven't read, but because I coach voiceover students, I use some sections from some of her kids' books for children's book scripts that I work on with my voiceover students.
Oh, so, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why do you pick those books exactly?
Well, I find stuff when I look, I just find sections of, whether it's adult books or kids' books, that a section that kind of stands on its own, that makes sense as a couple paragraphs, and that just is interesting and tells a story, maybe has dialogue, and it's just because there's certain paragraphs that you have to have some before or after, but if you find a couple paragraphs that kind of stand on their own, that's what you look for.
Okay. I was going to say, because her books, they're really easy to read, because I bought some the other day because I thought, you know what, I haven't read those books since elementary school, and I just got done with a children's literature course, and when I was looking at them, they're relatable to children, and I think that was one of the main reasons people were so hooked on those books. And I think that I saw an interview on CBS, I think, where a bunch of contemporary authors talk about how wonderful she is and how like her books actually spoke to real children, and that they were not idealized children or like well-behaved kids, that they were actually, you know, they threw temper tantrums. They had
flaws and stuff. Yeah.
And I think that's if you're a great writer can tell great stories with idealized characters, but I think another type of great writer is great at writing flawed people and making it relatable.
Absolutely.
And another person that's a writer that passed away is Ann Betts. She is a head writer, one of the original head writers for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, wow.
And, you know, it's one of those things, and she was also a part of National Lampoon. She actually contributed her dark sense of humor to the work. So in many ways, like, if you ever see anything pretty dark in National Lampoon or SNL, that was probably her. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people see her as a pioneer because she was one of the very few women on not only National Lampoon but SNL. Because of that, she went on to be nominated for an Emmy 5 times, winning once, and she won a Writers Guild Award and created Square Pegs.
Oh, okay.
With Sarah Jessica Parker, which surprisingly that show has a legacy, even though it lasted one season.
Interesting.
And you know, it just, for me, it sort of speaks to me, like, whenever I see like a woman, when I hear about a woman who was a pioneer at her time, it's like, geez, it's great that so many shows, you know, had a woman behind it, because it sort of shows that, like, we're getting to a point where we're starting to highlight that instead of ignoring it. You know what I mean?
And as I understand, I know it's getting better, but as I understand it, comedy writing, television comedy writing in Hollywood for years was a really totally male dominated. It was really hard for women to kind of break in. I know Tina Fey did. She did some writing, but I still think that it's still a little bit of a struggle, I think, from what I understand, for women to break into comedy writing, particularly.
It's to a point where I think a lot of times they still have to kind of announce that women are pioneering it rather than it being the norm, which, I'm hoping it gets to be a norm to the point that it's like, oh, it's that woman again writing that story, and it's great. But I think in some cases in the time of like Ann Betts, like SNL was mostly performer driven, where the people, where we weren't really thinking about who was writing behind it. And I think a lot of times we give Lorne Michaels a little bit more credit than he might deserve, honestly, on that case. Yeah,
because I think there were probably a lot of, you can research, there's a lot of writers that have contributed over the years to that stuff. Lots and lots.
Of course. And you know what? I got to say, rest in peace, Beverly Cleary and Beth and Prince Philip.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens about the funeral. I'm very interested to see that.
We'll have to cover that, but we'll be right back on the Culture Corner with some more guests. Stay tuned.
The curtain rises on local and regional arts and entertainment. From music to theater, films to fine art, it's the Culture Corner. Get connected. Call 760-544-TALK. That's 760-544-8255. Here's Bonnie and Brian on iHub Radio.
And we're back on the Culture Corner, and I'm really thrilled to welcome our next guest, Fern Field Brooks. She's a multi-talented woman, has had a long career, I think, in television producing and lots of writing. And she's got a new book out, Destiny's Children, A Cat Meow-Moir. I love that. So, hi, Fern. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you so much for doing this. This is a new one for me. I'm sitting in my car in a parking lot in Marina Del Rey.
Well, you know what? You sound great. Your sound's coming through loud and clear. So tell us about this book. This sounds like so much fun. Tell us how you came up with this.
It is. It's really a trilogy. The first book is out. They Call Me Destiny, which was the first year that this little orphaned kitten became part of our lives. And basically, she and I saved each other. She became my alter ego. She, of course, thought we humans were really very strange. Mm-hmm. And, when she would look at me with this look, are you really going to do that?
Uh-huh.
It was great. We spent 13 years together. And the trilogy is, book one is They Call Me Destiny, which is the first year she spent with us. Destiny's Children spans from actually 1963 to 72, and she met her soulmate, Dimitri, and had 7 kittens.
Wow.
And at one point we were living on Sutton Place in Manhattan with 8 cats. And in 72, then I moved to California, which she thought was the craziest thing I had done yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that book 3 will be out probably at the beginning of next year, and it's called Destiny Moves to La La Land.
Excellent. And now Destiny is still with us, yes?
No, it's a period piece. It's a view of the 60s from the point of view of Destiny.
Oh, okay.
Which is really quite interesting.
Okay, and so now tell us, you've written a number of books. This is not your first series of books, correct?
It's not my first book. My first book, which came out in hardcover in Japan, Canada, the United States, is titled Letters to My Husband. And they're letters that I wrote to my husband after he passed away. And the book is still helping people to this day. And because of COVID-19 and the fact that so many of us have lost people without having an opportunity to say goodbye, which is what happened to me. My husband, we were on vacation in New York, and he died in the middle of the night. Oh. So I'm making the book available to anybody who asks for it, because it is really still helping people survive the loss of a loved one.
Oh, that's great.
It's amazing. It's been doing this for more than 20 years, and just the other day, I got an email from somebody saying, oh, my God, this helped when nothing else did.
Wow. Isn't that must be such a gratifying feeling for you? I mean, everybody, wants fame and fortune and all that, but to do something like that that's really helping other people, that's got to be a pretty special feeling, I would guess.
Well, it is. It's very special, and it's funny because, I started in the business working for Norman Lear's company, and just the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, and then I wrote to Norman because I realized that when I moved to California back in 1975, I happened to get a job at Norman Lear's Tandem Productions, and it occurred to me that if I had gotten that job anyplace else, my life might have been entirely different, because working with Norman Lear, I was able, by coincidence, by chance, my whole life is by accident, we got involved in the disability community, and we literally changed our industry's perception of people with disabilities. And the first movie that I did was a short titled A Different Approach, which was a comedy musical, very, very avant-garde for that time, and we got nominated for an Oscar.
Wow.
So it was just, it's funny how things in your life affect you, and if you make the right choices and just see things through, it's amazing what can happen and the difference that somebody can make.
So you were working as a producer or associate producer, whatever, for Norman Lear?
No, I started as a secretary to the executive producer of Maude.
Okay.
And everything else happened by accident, because we did an episode on Maude where she goes back to a college reunion and her roommate, best friend, played by Nanette Sabre, is in a wheelchair because she's had a stroke. And Maude is very uncomfortable about it. And finally, her friend confronts her, and she says, I scare the daylights out of you. And B had to say, yes, you do. And the impact of that episode was so strange and strong that Norman came to my boss, and they started talking about developing a sitcom for with disabled people on the assembly line. And Rod Parker, my boss, told me, find me one. And that research led me by accident to this South Bay Mayor's Committee, a volunteer committee, and I got involved in a long story. But I got my partner, a comedy writer, Jim Belcher, and we made this short, which was very, very disrespectful and whatever. Today it would be okay, but in 1978 it was groundbreaking, and we were nominated for an Oscar. That was the first thing I ever did, and from then on, and everything kept happening by accident. It's too long to go into for your show, but when Maude went off the air, I was out of work, and I was, between jobs, and then we had a screening of the film, and Norman, everybody came, of course. We were like a family in those days, and Norman went back to the office and said, how come she's still not with this company? Because Maude had gone off the air and there were no openings. So they called me and asked me to be in development, and that led to something else. And I couldn't find a producer because Norman had found an idea he wanted to do, which was for syndication, and I didn't know where to look for a producer. So finally Norman got tired of asking me, did you find one? I said, not yet. He said, well, I think you should produce it. That was my first TV producing job.
Wow.
And I'm probably the only person on the planet who told Norman Lear that we had script problems when Norman Lear was the writer.
Wow.
And that was a whole other...
How did he take that?
He was wonderful, but I went home, I wrote him a letter that started out, I know that you know how hard it is to have to say that we have script problems when the writer is Norman Lear.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like telling Michelangelo the Sistine Chapel needs retouching.
Yes.
And I wrote it, and I came in figuring I've just had the shortest producing career in the history of television. I put the letter on his desk, and I went to my office waiting to be fired. And he said, listen, Fern, I not only like you, I respect you, I love you, and I'll just keep rewriting until we're all happy with the script.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I don't know him personally at all, but just the interviews I've seen, he strikes me as a really interesting, good people, besides being...
He is amazing, and the only reason that I was able to do so many things that touched people's lives was because Norman never said no.
Wow.
I said, Norman, will you be in this film? He said, it's fine, goodbye. And then all I had to say, I could call anybody. I could say, Norman Lear's going to be in our movie. Will you join him? And who's going to say no?
Right, exactly. So what brought you to the desert? How did you come out here?
Well, I thought back in 2000, I had been a network executive. I've had a lot of different jobs in the industry, and I thought, I'm done with the industry. I'm finished. Somebody laughed. They said the only thing I had to do to get a job was say I'm going to the desert to write. So I did. I thought I was finished with it. So I sold my condo in Marina Del Rey, and I started building a house in the desert. And 2 weeks later, I got offered a full-time job in L.A.
Wow.
And that was back in 2000, and one thing led to another. And every time I thought I was done, the last thing was Monk. I said, I'm going to the desert to write. That was about 2001. And my friend called me to produce the first season, and then it went on for 8 seasons.
Wow.
So I kept going back and forth, and finally I realized that maybe I was too far from my family and everybody. So I sold the house in 2017, and now everybody I know is trying to figure out where's a good place to go to wind up a life and a career.
My goodness. Well, now, so where can people get the book? Can they get it at local bookstores, Amazon?
It's not out yet. It's not out yet. It will be published on May 9th, which is Mother's Day, in honor of Destiny's motherhood. Okay. And they can email me if they're interested. It's fernfieldbrooks@gmail.com, which is easier than the publishing company. And they can stay tuned, and it's going to be on sale with an insider price for your listeners and other interview and bloggers. It'll be on sale through my Books to Cherish, which is books and then the number 2 and then cherish.com. And it'll be $10, and you'll probably, they'll be hearing about it. They can call me or email me, fernfieldbrooks@gmail.com, and I look forward to it. And if anybody has suffered the loss of a loved one, please ask me for a copy of Letters to My Husband. It will help, I promise you.
I always like to ask, when we have a couple minutes left, I always like to ask writers, are you someone who sits down and says, okay, today I'm going to write from 10 to 1, or do you wake up in the middle of the night, or both?
No, I'm always getting ideas in my head 24/7, and I have not, because I used to make my husband crazy because I multitask, and there are always so many different things going on in my life. So I haven't been able to say, okay, from 6 o'clock in the morning until 12 noon, I'm going to write. But once I get started, then I could go until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But like the other day, I was thinking about book 3 in the trilogy, and I saw this picture which was just perfect for it, and I thought, oh my God, that's the last beat of the last book in the trilogy, and I love it. And I told my book designer, Deborah McCormick, and she loved the idea. She laughed. So, I've got the end of the book already, the end of the trilogy. And that came to me, just as I was doing something else.
Yeah, and so after this trilogy, I'm sure you probably have several other ideas kicking around in your head for future books?
Well, I have been working on it for a long time, but I think the timing is right now, and the title is Producers Don't Cry. And
I love
about all my experiences in the business, which all happened by accident.
Yeah. Well, Fern Field Brooks, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have to check this book out. This sounds like such fun. And I know a lot of people that are really cat lovers. I'm going to have to get for them. And also Letters to My Husband. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Send me your address. I'll send you the book.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Really appreciate it. Congrats on the book.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we'll be back with more on the Culture Corner in just a bit.
You're listening to Bonnie Gilgallon and Brayan Mendoza, talking arts and entertainment on iHub Radio's The Culture Corner. Live from the desert cities of Southern California, here's Brayan and Bonnie.
On this segment of The Culture Corner, we're going to get into some more news. Actually, we forgot to mention, in terms of celebrity deaths, Midwin Charles.
Yeah, so sad. Too young. 47 or whatever. Yeah.
47 years old. She was a CNN illegal analyst, and she was the person personally named in an interview by Alex Trebek to replace him on
That's who he
Jeopardy.
wanted, yeah.
So it's a real tragedy because, like, who knew? So abrupt. 47 years old, and
no, I think no cause of death has been listed yet. But
no, and it's also like when you saw her on the news last time, seemed pretty normal.
Yeah.
Like nothing was happening.
Yeah, she was legal. I think she was a lawyer, legal analyst. She was on MSNBC on Rachel and on Joy Reid's shows, and very, very bright woman. Yeah, it's very sad. Very sad.
It's a real tragedy, and I guess it opens up I think a lot of people were kind of thinking that she might replace Alex Trebek, but I guess,
well, now she's not.
Now she's not, which is kind of a sad.
You were asking me about. I saw Aaron Rodgers, and my Eric, my partner, loves Aaron Rodgers because he's a Packers fan. But I thought he did quite well. I saw one show with him hosting Jeopardy. I think he did a good job.
I heard that a lot of fans really like his candor, that he's actually really nice and that he's really likable. I've also heard that he throws in a few subtle jokes and references to Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL. I don't know what exactly he threw in, but that's what I
don't remember that, but yeah. But I thought he did a good job. Very, very personable, low key, nice charisma. Not, comes across as being very bright, very friendly with the contestants. So I liked him.
Oh, yeah. And another person pointed out that he's not bad to look at either, I suppose.
Well, yeah. He's a nice-looking guy. Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, like, Jeopardy is very famous for more for its intellectualism than anything else. And I think that if you can play to that really well, and also because I guess it wouldn't hurt to have someone like Aaron Rodgers to be sort of like a new, fresh face on there.
And it might bring some new fans to Jeopardy who might not otherwise have checked it out.
That's true. And also I think that Jeopardy is one of those shows where it's always about it's open-minded enough to reinvent itself. Even the questions, a question in 1980 would not be the same as today.
Right. And they throw in some pop culture. I mean, I love it because it's very, very educational. It's, you have to rack your brain. But they throw in some pop culture stuff and some movie stuff and occasionally some pop music. It's not all, history and battles, It's a mix.
Oh, yeah. And what I love about... And it's one of those things where I think... people like Aaron Rodgers can really succeed, and I like the fact that they're doing guest hosts because it's nice to see who could be the permanent replacement. Now some people are saying that maybe let's try out a few other people before we decide on Aaron Rodgers, but it seems that he is the presumptive favorite for some people.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see a few more to check it out. Now I know his name was thrown around, but I don't know. Is Anderson Cooper on the list of proposed guests?
I had heard, but I wasn't sure.
I like him. I'd like to see him do it for a week. Check it out.
The funny thing is, I would even throw in I've even said very jokingly, maybe a Rachel Maddow, just to see how that would have worked.
Oh, I'd love to see her. I don't think she'd do it, but I love Rachel. I'd love to see her do it. I think she's too busy, but she'd be great.
She'd be great. And then also, there's just so many interesting people you can put on there, but it strikes me as interesting that a person known for football, Aaron Rodgers, would be one of the standouts, and because some of the other people who have television, I'm going to say quotations, charisma, like Dr. Oz, don't quite hit it. No. It's interesting how that man's been on television for years and decades, but not
it's
quite.
Weird. It's almost like you just don't know what it is. It's just that it factor, and you're not quite sure. It just has to be a combination of looking good on camera, being smart, coming across as being intelligent, come across as being jovial with the guests, and just it's a combination of things. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, since you watch Jeopardy more than I do, have you seen a guest host where you were like really excited for them and then it wasn't as great as you had hoped it would be?
You know, I'm not sure if that's exact, but I saw Katie Couric and I thought she did a nice job. I don't see her as being the choice. And I like Katie Couric, but you know, she's so perky and smiling. Let's play Jeopardy. You know, I like her, and she did a bad job. I just don't see her as the permanent host. You know, that
is the best way to put it for her, because like I saw a few of her episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one bit of an episode, and I thought she's likable on this show, but I don't think she's the right fit for it.
Yeah, I don't think she's the right fit.
And even Midwin Charles, which I was surprised wasn't on the list, but unfortunately, you know, she doesn't have that opportunity anymore. Yeah. But I'm surprised she wasn't. And I also wanted to name drop just because you know, he passed away too. DMX. DMX is a famous rapper. He is someone that is well known for adding a lot of aggressivity to his music. And pretty recently, his music got a bit of a boost because on a television show called Rick and Morty, they use his music in a backdrop of a scene where a group of characters beat up a Nazi.
Now, that's an animated show, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's an animated series, and it's one of those shows that if you really loved shows like Family Guy, you would love shows like Rick and Morty, but Rick and Morty is a much more intelligent show.
Okay.
And so for me, Rick and Morty has always had a good ear for music.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they use DMX's X Gonna Give It To You, which is a very aggressive song, but you know what I think is interesting about DMX is that song in itself doesn't have a lot of cuss words. And rap music is sort of has this
known for that.
And you know, other types of music is known for that too, like pop music, but I think rap music has a stigma that it's so aggressive. Like I think earlier this show we talked about Lil Nas X's video, and it was provocative, but when you listen to the song, there's hardly any cuss words in it, which, you know, surprisingly back in the day, having cuss words in a song would get you a whole Senate trial. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
With Twisted Sister.
Yeah. And you know, DMX, he's the one, he was in the hospital for a while hanging on, and then he passed, right? Was it a drug thing or an overdose or something? What was
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
But wasn't he in the hospital for a few days before he passed? I thought I saw that.
Yes.
And his family was holding a vigil and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yes, it was exactly that. And it's one of those things where, like, I actually really like DMX. Like, surprisingly, like, I actually was surprised by, like, the fact that I don't listen to a lot of rap music myself, but when I was listening to it, I thought, you know what, I've actually heard these songs somehow. Like, somehow I was able to listen to these. And according to this, it was possibly from a drug overdose, and that he lost a lot of function in his essential organs. But, you know, with celebrities, drug overdoses, you know, it's always a tragedy, because it's one of those things where you kind of have to realize, like, you know, with all this fame and money, that there's still a human underneath.
And still, it doesn't, just because you're rich and famous doesn't necessarily protect you from all that stuff. Nope.
And the sad thing is, drugs are more accessible to you when you're rich.
You can get whatever you want,
And it's such a tragedy. Yeah. But, you know, rest in peace, Midwin Charles and DMX, and good luck to any future guest hosts on Jeopardy, since we spent a good time talking about it.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see who else they get on there and who they end up with. When we come back, I'm so excited. My friend Siobhan Velarde, we're doing a show, Bosom Buddies. We're going to talk to her in a little bit on the Culture Corner.